You're standing naked in a cold stone room in 1837 England. A guardian strips away your wedding ring, your coat, even your spectacles, worth maybe 2 shillings, and hands you a striped uniform that marks you as something less than human. In 60 seconds, you'll be separated from your wife and children, possibly forever. Welcome to History Snapshots. This is what life as a workhouse inmate really looked like, and what it reveals about institutional cruelty still matters today. Because what happened next wasn't an accident of history, it was policy. By 1834, Parliament had passed the Poor Law Amendment Act, a piece of legislation designed with a single purpose: to make poverty so shameful, so unbearable, that the destitute would accept any alternative. The architects of this system, bureaucrats like Edwin Chadwick and Nassau Sr., openly stated their goal wasn't charity, it was deterrence. They wanted workhouses to function as what they called self-acting tests of destitution. If you were desperate enough to enter, you surrendered everything: your possessions, your dignity, your family. The moment you crossed that threshold, your old life ended. Your name was recorded in a ledger, your clothes were fumigated or burned, and you were issued a uniform that announced your failure to the world. For married couples, the separation was immediate and absolute. The workhouse operated on a principle called classification, a system that divided inmates into 7 distinct categories: able-bodied men, able-bodied women, children over 7, children under 7, the elderly, the infirm, and the morally deficient. Each class was housed in separate wings, often on opposite sides of sprawling compounds that could hold 500 souls or more. Husbands were sent to the men's ward, wives to the women's. Children over 7 were separated by sex and sent to juvenile dormitories, where they learned trades like oakum picking, unraveling old tarred rope until their fingers bled. Mothers with infants under 2 were permitted to keep them, but only until the child could walk. After that, the child was reclassified. The architecture itself enforced isolation. High walls, locked doors, and strict schedules meant that even if your husband was 100 feet away, you might not see him for months except during the mandatory Sunday chapel service, where speaking was forbidden. For women who entered pregnant and unmarried, the humiliation was compounded. At institutions like the Bristol Incorporation Workhouse, they were forced to wear bright yellow dresses, a visual brand of sexual shame, visible to every inmate and visitor. Your day began at 5:30 a.m. in summer, 6:30 in winter, announced by a bell that echoed through stone corridors. You rose from a bed shared with 2 strangers, mattresses stuffed with straw or flock, often crawling with lice. Breakfast was served at 6 a.m., 6 ounces of bread and a pint of gruel, a watery porridge made from oatmeal that contemporary reports described as barely palatable. Then work. Able-bodied men broke stones in the yard, crushing granite and flint into gravel for roads, swinging hammers for 10 hours with a single break. Women picked oakum, cleaned or worked in the laundry, scrubbing sheets in scalding water. Children under 12 attended school for 3 hours, then joined the labor. The diet was codified by law. Precise rations designed to sustain life but never satisfy. Dinner at noon might be 5 ounces of cooked meat, 12 ounces of potatoes and bread. Supper at 6 p.m. was bread and cheese or more gruel. No salt, no seasoning, no variation. Inmates at some workhouses reported that the food provided to them was measurably worse than what prisoners received in county jails. And here's the mechanism worth understanding. Monotony wasn't a side effect, it was the point. Privacy did not exist. Guardians, paid overseers employed by the Board of Guardians, the local authority managing each union workhouse, monitored every moment. They watched you work. They watched you eat. Once a week you bathed in a communal tub while a guardian stood by to ensure you didn't linger or waste soap. Male inmates shaved under supervision. Women had their hair inspected for lice and, in some cases, cropped short as punishment for infractions like speaking during meals or failing to meet work quotas. Punishments were codified in the workhouse regulations. Minor offenses, talking, laughing, being late to chapel, earned you reduced rations or solitary confinement in a refractory cell, a windowless room where you sat in darkness for up to 24 hours. Serious offenses, like attempting to visit your spouse's ward or smuggling a letter, could result in your case being sent to magistrates, who might sentence you to hard labor in an actual prison. But this did not mean the system was universally brutal in every detail. By the 1890s, some workhouses began offering small concessions to the elderly: tobacco rations, newspapers, the ability to wear their own clothes. At Macclesfield, the aged poor had decorated wards and could keep small pets. Yet for the able-bodied, the young and the unmarried mothers, the regime remained unchanged. The question isn't whether conditions improved at the margins, it's why the system required terror in the first place. Workhouses were death traps. Mortality rates, especially among children and the elderly, were staggering. Diseases like smallpox, measles, typhus and cholera spread rapidly through overcrowded dormitories where beds were crammed side by side, with barely room to walk. Ventilation was poor, sanitation was worse, chamber pots overflowed. Sick inmates were often housed alongside the healthy until symptoms became undeniable. At the Andover Workhouse in 1845, a scandal erupted when investigators discovered that starving inmates were fighting over rotting bones, meant for grinding into fertilizer, because fragments of decayed meat still clung to them. The master of that workhouse, a man named Colin MacDougall, was found to have reduced rations below legal minimums and pocketed the savings. He was dismissed, but the system that enabled him remained. For unmarried mothers, survival meant enduring not just physical hardship but moral persecution. They were segregated, shamed, and in some unions forced to perform the hardest labor as penance. Their children, if they survived infancy, were often sent to industrial schools or apprenticed out at age 9, never to return. The exception was the very young and the very old, who were sometimes treated with a measure of mercy. But mercy was never the system's design. By 1930, the workhouse system was officially abolished, replaced by public assistance programs that no longer required families to surrender their freedom. But the scars remained. Survivors, some of whom lived into the 1960s, spoke of the shame, the separation, the cold stone rooms where everything was taken, the wedding rings, the spectacles, the children. The architects of the 1834 Poor Law believed that poverty was a moral failure and that suffering would correct it. They were wrong. What the workhouse reveals isn't Victorian cruelty, it's the inevitable outcome when institutions are designed to punish need instead of addressing it. The logic was simple: make the cure worse than the disease, and people will avoid it. But poverty isn't a choice, and systems built on shame don't reduce suffering, they just hide it behind high walls. This pattern hasn't disappeared. It returns whenever we design policies that treat vulnerability as a character flaw, that separate families to save costs, that prioritize deterrence over dignity. Watch for it in your own time, in the bureaucracy that humiliates before it helps, in the assistance program that demands surrender of autonomy, in the institution that mistakes cruelty for efficiency. The workhouse is gone. The instinct that built it is not.